Welcome to This Explainer. You know, normally an Irish summer without rain is cause for a national holiday, right? But today, well, we're going to subvert that sunny narrative. Instead of packing for a beach trip, we're tracking a cascading climate crisis. It's literally a domino effect that starts with a simple dry spell and crashes into, well, pretty much every corner of our society.
So let's dive right in. To most of us, hearing a status yellow heat warning just sounds like the perfect excuse for a beach day. But the grim meteorological reality is that we've seen just 17% of average rainfall in July. I mean, 17%. This isn't just a lucky stretch of sunshine we're dealing with. It's a severe, record-breaking drought that is absolutely hammering regions like Leinster and Tipperary.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the new normal. Second, crisis on the farm. Third, the supermarket ripple effect. Fourth, wildfires and urban heat. And finally, facing the future.
Section 1. Crisis on the farm, ground zero of the drought. Those rolling green hills this country is so famous for, yeah, they are rapidly turning a parched, crispy yellow because grass growth has completely stalled out. And that brings us to a frankly staggering number, 11,000 euros. That is the financial hemorrhage one individual farmer reported experiencing every single week as this drought drags on. Think about that. With the grass gone, the economic cost isn't some distant threat. It's an astronomical, immediate reality hitting farm bank accounts right this very second.
But you know, behind that harsh math is a quiet desperation. We'd welcome a drop of rain. Absolutely. That incredibly understated quote from a local farmer perfectly captures the stressful, day-to-day reality for the people working tirelessly just to feed the nation. And these dry conditions, they force an absolutely impossible choice. With literally no grass in the fields, farmers have to dip into their winter fodder supplies right now, in the middle of summer. It's this incredibly dangerous balancing act. Sure, it keeps the animals fed today, but it virtually guarantees a severe food shortage this coming winter. The agricultural pressures are compounding everywhere you look. The Farming Association, ICMSA, is actually reporting zero grass growth in the southeast. Zero. And right now, every farmer's biggest nightmare is finding an empty water trough when their livestock are already heat-stressed. The situation is so dire that Met Éireann had to roll out a nationwide hosepipe ban just to protect our basic drinking water reserves. Section 2. The supermarket ripple effect, from farm to dinner table.
Now, this crisis doesn't just stop at the farm gate. It's heading straight for your wallet. We're looking at a completely devastating 40% loss in potato yields in some regions. The ground is literally so dry that farmers are desperately resorting to using slurry tankers, which, remember, are normally used for waste fertilizer, just to water their fields and try to keep the surviving 60% of their crops alive. Jason O'Leary, who's the potato chair for the Irish Farmers Association down in Wexford, notes that the potatoes actually surviving this heat are much smaller than usual. And lower yields combined with smaller crops mean one inescapable thing for us. The price of your Sunday roast? It's definitely about to spike. And it's not just the potatoes taking a hit. Winter barley yields are expected to drop by half to 3/4 of a ton. This parallel collapse in cereal yields is adding this massive secondary layer of pressure to our entire national food supply. So what does this all mean? How exactly does a dry field today equal an expensive grocery bill tomorrow? Well, it's basically a perfect storm. Step 1, our domestic drought collides with global turmoil in places like Ukraine and Iran. This directly triggers Step 2, fuel price hikes. Step 3 is kind of the silent killer here. Economic researchers at the ESRI warn of a 9-month lag before these pressures fully filter through the economy. Which brings us to Step 4, massive supermarket price spikes that hit right when consumers think the worst is actually over. So the crucial takeaway for the everyday consumer really comes down to this number, 500 euros. A seemingly simple 5% hike in food prices, driven by everything we've just talked about, will end up costing an average family of 4 an extra 500 euros a year. That is the harsh, unavoidable reality of the drought literally pulling money directly out of your bank account. Because these kinds of shocks are becoming way more common, TGAS has actually issued urgent resilience advice to the farming community. They're heavily advising farmers to reduce their stocking rates, meaning, keeping fewer animals on the land, and to create strict annual fodder budgets. Adapting to these extreme agricultural shocks, it's really no longer optional. It's an absolute requirement for survival. Section 3. Wildfires and urban heat, the collateral damage. Looking beyond the farm, this lack of rain has turned the countryside into a literal tinderbox. We are seeing incredibly dangerous wildfires breaking out across hotspots in Wicklow, Waterford, and even right in Dublin, which is just draining massive amounts of emergency resources. But the danger isn't just out in rural forests. Recent research coming out of Cork highlights a massive temperature spike due to the urban heat island effect. Basically, our concrete-heavy cities are becoming these baking hotspots, measuring up to 15 degrees Celsius hotter than normal baseline city temperatures. 15 degrees.
And because of those baking urban temperatures, the Climate and Health Alliance, which, by the way, includes major organizations like the Irish Heart Foundation and the Irish Cancer Society, well, they're calling for immediate heat health action plans in our cities. They are urgently stressing that this is a true public health crisis. I mean, this isn't just about feeling a bit sweaty and uncomfortable in the office. It's about vulnerable people facing life-threatening heat stress right in our city centers.
Section 4. Facing the Future, The Reckoning.
Okay, first, some good news from Met Éireann. While we're seeing these really intense peaks up to 31 degrees on Thursday, this short, intense hot spell is finally going to break. By Friday, temperatures are expected to drop back down, and by Sunday, we should thankfully see some showery rain moving in from the west. But while the weather will eventually break, the systemic issue completely remains. As the Taoiseach stated clearly on the record, climate change is having real-life impacts. We're no longer just talking about abstract, distant future models. We are dealing with systemic changes that carry really heavy, real-world costs right here, right now. Because the harsh truth of the matter is that the damage is already done. Even when that rain finally returns, the dwindling winter fodder supplies and those soaring production costs we talked about, they're already completely locked in. A few light showers on a Sunday simply cannot wash away the deep economic and agricultural damage of this calendar year. Which leaves us with one critical thought to wrap up this explainer. As we eventually get to turn our hose pipes back on and enjoy that returning rain, we really have to look at the massive chain reaction this single dry spell caused. It begs a pretty chilling question we all need to consider. When the inevitable next extreme weather event hits, how ready will we actually be?